Uncle Bud, Unshaken in the Wake of Sputnik, October 1957. Maybe because they were strangely so much alike, 180 pounds, and transmitting essentially meaningless signals from their distance. Although Sputnik, with its intermittent beeping, was moving undeniably faster than my uncle, orbiting the Earth every hour and a half. It took Bud that long just to wake up, make coffee, and scramble his eggs before heading into another day full of his unfinished get-rich-quick inventions, muttering to himself on his unhurried way to anywhere. Overnight, the Russians had clearly taken most of the world by surprise. And what exactly was that satellite supposed to be doing up there anyway? No one ever really knew what Uncle Bud was up to either, clanking and banging through so many impossible nights in his work shed. But they weren't about to lose any real sleep over him. The only reason for the beeping? A 1-volt battery-powered radio transmitter, so Sputnik could be tracked over those 3 weeks before it fell silent. It stayed in orbit another 70 days, visible to anyone looking up just beyond the familiar horizon. And Uncle Bud couldn't help but look quietly upon it every chance he got. He saw it as someone's personal triumph, no matter how small. Old-fashioned know-how flying high before the inevitable crash and burn. Half a world away, little Richard saw it too, during an outdoor concert in Australia, and took it somehow as a sign more divine than ingeniously human. Immediately, he walked off the stage, renounced rock and roll, and for a while fell into his own good golly brand of evangelism. But Uncle Bud was saying to hell with rock and roll long before Sputnik was even a gleam in little Richard's wide eyes. And while the Cold War was taken to new, out-of-this-world heights, the fear was still down to earth. The country that had launched this harmless beach ball of a satellite surely wasn't doing it for fun, could just as easily target anywhere on the planet with a guided nuclear warhead. And this was only a guess. That would be us. And so a suddenly white-knuckled USA got cracking. Thanks to those no-goodnik Russians, I'd soon be weighed down with more grade school science and arithmetic than I'd ever counted on, now that we had serious catching up to do, even if no one could touch us when it came to engineering the coolest automotive tail fins in the world. On the same day that Sputnik was fired into orbit, the first in an upcoming flurry of launches we insisted for a while on calling space shots, Jimmy Hoffa was elected Teamsters president. He stayed aloft for years before disappearing into the vastness of some different space altogether. Leave It to Beaver was just getting off the television ground that night. And the Yankees, the goddamn Yankees, were back again in the World Series, where it would be up to Braves pitcher Lou Burdett, spitball or not, to shut them down and finally out. In the year of the Edsel, which went absolutely nowhere, in the year of the worst flu outbreak since the end of World War I, Americans were also coming down all over with acute Sputnik-itis, an unhealthy obsession with Russia's eye-opener. Headlines like "Red Moon over America" had them knocking back their share of Sputnik cocktails, 2 parts vodka, 1 part sour grapes. They'd lighten up later with Sputnik lamps, Sputnik hairdos, Sputnik shish kebab. They'd come to say going Sputnik for anything that seemed even the least bit way out there, like Uncle Bud himself, or like those newly christened beatniks that Bud had no time for either. But first, it was the night sweats, weakness, a national case of the willies. Report after unconfirmed report had Sputnik setting off thousands of those new electric garage door openers all across the country. 12 years later, America would finally put its foot down, beating the Russians to the moon. Bud would find it tough to believe anyone was truly on the moon and not a top-secret movie set hidden away in Arizona or somewhere else he'd never been. My Uncle Bud, always one small step or two ahead of his conspiratorial time. Either way, it was hard to imagine in 1957. Not even that much cold comfort in the shadow of Sputnik on those crisp October nights, a long way from any sea of tranquility, from Armstrong and Aldrin, and especially that third guy, just along for the high-powered ride, the one who'd get stuck with staying behind, locked into his solitary lunar orbit, no doubt cursing his short straw luck, forever miles away from any real historic action. Of everything NASA would try to sell him, that much at least Bud would buy. The only beeping I heard was the horn of Bud's worn-out Buick. From my bedroom window, I could see him again, painfully visible to the naked eye, straining under the weight of whatever he was lifting, this time out of the trunk. A patchwork masterpiece of metal bulbs and wires he began to assemble in the moonlit driveway. 2 parts Buck Rogers and 1 part Sears Roebuck, taking me into his ridiculous confidence again, because I was the only one in the family who believed in him, or at least believed in the idea of him. I've been working on something that can bring it crashing down. Uncle Bud had thought it over and decided, on behalf of the greater good, there was nothing else to be done. And so there we were, mostly in the dark, aiming his latest contraption into space, whatever it was. Both of us hunkering down in our Cold War Rosebushes bunker, waiting for anything small and brilliant to flash by over our heads, for the telltale garage door to open for no apparent reason. But he would know better, and me too, just then, for knowing him. And when the motorized garage door actually lifted, we still could hardly believe it. My mother standing at the switch, awakened from a fitful sleep, not quite dreaming what was going down that night, right there in her own American backyard. My uncle and I were no rocket scientists, but we had a feeling, Sputnik or no Sputnik, there was going to be trouble if she spotted us in the bushes among her beloved American beauties, or what was left of them that late in the year. Those reds and purples, the only true colors of blood and bruise. As if all the radiant pain of being alive had just come together in a single tight bud, making ready to blossom into one last inexplicably joyful noise.